Each man has his breaking point, you know, and you are no exception.
When a girl is driven to suicide, the prisoner calls it murder. A murder he must avenge in Hammer Into Anvil.
Get the most down! Get it down!
Yes, sir.
Who can he be signaling to? We'll find out. Radar! Anything?
No, sir. Not at sea.
There must be.
No, sir. There's no ship, sir.
There must be an aircraft, helicopter, something.
There's nothing, sir.
Under the sea, submarine. Try the sonar.
No, sir. There's nothing coming through.
You can stop acting now, you know. I've been on to you from the beginning. I knew what you were doing. All those messages you sent, and all those people you recruited, I knew you were advanced.
The prisoner abandons his plans to escape to destroy his captors in the next dramatically different adventure of The Prisoner on this channel.
Where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. Whose side are you on? That would be telling. We want information. 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 What do you want? Information. What do you want? What do you want? Information. What do you want? Whose side are you on? What do you want? Information. What do you want? Information.
Hi, I'm Scott Appel, video critic for the San Jose Mercury News, and your host for The Prisoner here on Channel 54. Tonight's story, Hammer Into Anvil, is another episode pivotal in defining the prisoner's relationship with his captors. The cat and mouse game between them takes a new turn now, as the mouse becomes cat. But before we give away too much, let's just mention a couple of things to watch for in this episode. First would be the quotes the principals use to define their adversarial roles and their personalities. Second is the behavior of the silent butler, number two's most loyal servant. Combine these subtle nuances with some masterful acting in a truly humorous fight scene where soothing music plays counterpoint to the violence, and you have the ingredients for a very special episode. I'll be back later to talk about the importance of this program in relation to the series as a whole, and I'll share some trivia with you about the ever-present penny farthing bicycle. So, be seeing you after Hammer Into Anvil.
Where am I?
In the village.
What do you want?
Information.
Whose side are you on?
That would be telling. We want information. Information. Information.
You won't get it.
By hook or by crook, we will.
Who are you?
The new number 2.
Who is number 1?
You are number 6.
I am not a number. I am a free man.
Welcome back, my friends, to an all-new episode of Once Upon a Village, a prisoner podcast. It's your number 2 here, John S. Drew, and I've got to ask my own number 6 here, Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Hey, what are you going to ask me? If I'm Hammer or Anvil?
Are you Hammer or Anvil? Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, let's find out as we go along here which one of us is Hammer and which one Anvil.
Yes. Now, this is an interesting one. Aired December 1st, 1967 in the UK. And again, we're jumping around with the United States airings. Now we jump ahead to August 31st, 1968 for this episode here. But I will say one thing, and as we get into the discussion here, I know we've been told not to worry so much about episode orders and stuff like that, and we've been given that.
Yeah.
I feel this one is placed firmly where it belongs.
I agree with that. It's there's a feeling that number 6 is not settling in, but he's been here for a while. Mm-hmm. I got a kick out of it. He actually calls himself number 6.
Yes.
In this. So, I totally agree with you. It's probably right where it should be.
Yeah. Do you want to dive right into it here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, and I think I might have said this before. This is one of my dad's favorite episodes. That if he remembers anything, my dad is going to be 84 in December. If he remembers anything, from the show as far as particulars, he always did bring up this episode as one that he really liked. And I'm going to go ahead and agree with him. This is one of my favorite episodes too.
Did he ever give you any reasoning?
No, I think he just got a kick out of what the prisoner is doing in this one, and that it is different from other episodes. It's a complete turning the tables. I found myself chuckling how many different times, and for the right reasons, at the stuff that number 6, not only what 6 is doing, but number 2's reactions to it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you really, really, it's almost like we deserve this episode as far as you really want to sock it to the village authorities, and boy, do they get socked in this one.
Well, and putting aside because there at one point he makes a comment to the effect of there have been number 2s before and such to our current number 2 here. This is one of those ones that it feels just about right the way he deals with this particular one, and not just because of who number 2 is and his demeanor, which we'll get into as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. It's also unusual because this one opens first with the hospital, and we see a recovering number 73 who has, for me, it was a little shocking to even hear them saying it, for 60s television, slashed her wrists.
Yeah, this is an incredible opening scene, and it immediately informs us about this number 2.
Yes.
And that's why right off the bat it's eye-opening, because this is a hard-edged number 2. We've never really had. I mean, all the number 2s have been serious, but the other ones seem to be more that they enjoyed playing with number 6, doing the verbal fencing and all of that. But they rarely got, let's call it, deadly serious. This number 2 is quite a bastard as far as I'm concerned. He's a nasty piece of work.
He's so nasty. I mean, not only just here with 73, we'll see, whereas, like you say, the others had their playfulness too, because their thing was, we want to convert him. We want him to join. Number 2 here wants 6, our prisoner, broken.
Yeah, you'll pay for this. Yeah. He actually says to 6.
Yeah. And when he says that, that's because what happens is that his attempts to try and get 73 to reveal information about her husband, who they then report has been cheating on her with a woman named Mariah, has no effect. She will not look at the pictures. She will not answer. She says, I know nothing. So then 2 loses his patience. And while we don't see what he does to her, we know it's enough for her to scream so violently that it is heard across the village, and the prisoner comes running into the hospital.
Oh, okay, let's stop right there. What in the hell was he doing or about to do? I mean, this goes into this whole thing about this guy's a monster. What? I mean, we're supposed to imagine what is going on. Obviously, we're not being shown, but I'm trying to figure out, what it is, because she screams bloody blue murder.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating that number 6, he runs to the damsel's, aid.
Yes.
It's interesting because no matter how cold number 6 can get, and especially towards women, he hears a woman scream, he must know that it's a real scream of terror, and he goes running immediately. I really love that because I think it says something very true about our prisoner, is that no matter what, no matter how he acts towards women in other episodes, this is at his core what he is. He's going to run to a woman's rescue when he hears her screaming.
He's going to run to her rescue, and then he's going to avenge her death, because as he bursts into the room, the woman has leaped out the window to her death.
You shouldn't have interfered, number 6. You'll pay for this. You will.
That's you're absolutely right. There's some chilling stuff going on here. She's already tried to kill herself, and then to go so far as to take her life, or do it again, but actually succeed and jump out the window, and then just the cold back and forth between 6 and 2. Immediately after that, I mean, number 2's pissed. You'll pay for this, and number 6 replies like, "You will."
Right.
And you go, guy. Yeah, sock it to him.
Mm-hmm. But there you see it. Not the usual banter.
No, not at all. It really sets this relationship between 6 and 2 different than really any other 6 and 2 relationship in this show.
Yes. Now, a little later on, number 2 calls the prisoner in his home, to his home, I should say, but he refuses to go. Instead, he goes for a walk, and as he's walking down a lane, one of the taxis comes along with a squad of men. There's like one driving and 3 others. We get our little fight scene that we got to have, but they're able to take him down and bring him to number 2.
Yeah, but listen, John, it takes 3 guys.
Oh, yeah.
To get our number 6. I love it. You know what? For a moment, they give a quick shot of the driver turning around to watch this. You would almost think that he's going to get up, that they need 4 guys to take care of 6. But you know what? They pulled a cheap move on him with the rolling and the hitting his legs from behind to make him fall over. That was a cheap bastard move right there. If it wasn't for that, he would have kicked their asses.
Now, that driver, was that number 14 who we see later in the story?
Oh, boy. It's funny. I just watched this. I don't think so. I thought the driver was dark-haired. I could have sworn he was fair-haired. I don't know. I'm going to have to say I don't know. The reason I ask is because at first, because he was off. It's not like they did any close-ups with him. He looked for a moment like this character actor from British television, Bernard Horsfall. And then I thought it was him again as number 14. And I looked and I was like, oh, no, it's not Bernard Horsfall. We're good. Which then also leads me to something, Jim, there are no Doctor Who actors in this episode. Oh, no. Wow. It really stands out. What did you do with yourself during this episode? Here's what I have to say. If that's number 14, that doesn't really ring true, because the character of number 14 that we learn about through this episode, I can't see him as a driver for a group of thugs,
I could see him as that if it's a means to an end, because what we see early on is his attempts to wanting to be in on the deal. And, because there's 2 occasions where number 2 is like, you can go now, 14. Like, you don't need to see this.
Oh, he becomes quite an embarrassing bootlicker, to be honest.
Right.
He's a toady of the highest kind.
Exactly. Yeah. So they take the prisoner to number 2.
We have things to discuss about the girl you murdered. Oh, never mind the girl. I want to talk about you. You're wasting your time. Many have tried. Amateurs. You're professional. A professional sadist? Light blue. Fearless. Or are you? Each man has his breaking point, you know. And you are no exception. Ah, you react. Are you afraid of me? What is going on up there? Disgusting. You think you're strong? We'll see. Du must emboss oder hammer sign. You must be anvil or hammer. I see you know your getter. And you see me as the anvil? Precisely. I am going to hammer you.
And like you said, there's those lines from The Prisoner about how there have been various number twos before. Many have tried to break him. He also gets in a jibe, which I thought was interesting, because we haven't thrown this word out yet, number two being a sadist.
Yes. Yeah, well, then he actually has the temerity to hit number 6.
Yes.
The give him one of those, good backhand slaps. Think about that. Has that ever happened before in this show? Is there...
Except for in Free For All, but again, we surmise that was probably the female number 6 slapping him, the female number 2 slapping him to sort of get him out of his stupor.
Definitely, but this is an actual, physical violence for the sake of physical violence.
Right.
We have not had that, and I love it because 6 doesn't blink.
He doesn't blink there, and he barely blinks when 2 holds the sword between his eyes and then up at his temple.
Yep. Yeah. This is our man. This is the cool, guy that we love to follow in this show. He is not going to give an inch. He is not going to give this guy anything, and he digging in. When they ratchet up the threats and the violence and everything else, he just digs in and is not going to have it.
Right. And this is where we get the whole theme of the episode, the title, Hammer into Anvil, as we get it's in the original German, but it's basically you must be the hammer or the anvil. And it seems the way this is going is that the hammer is supposed to be number 2 and number 6, the prisoner, is the anvil.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Now,
do you want to go ahead? I know what's next. Go ahead.
Okay, because I was going to say then he gets a phone call, and that phone call is on the big phone.
On that phone.
The phone from what is it? What episode was it?
It's A, B, and C.
A, B, and C, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, from A, B, and C.
Yeah, we know who's on the other end of that phone.
Yes.
But here's a question that I have. I actually wrote a note to this. So number 2 answers it, right?
Right.
And he announces himself. He actually says, this is number 2. So I have to ask something. Why does he bother saying who he is? Is there the chance that somebody else would answer that phone?
I don't know. It's a good question. I got one even better though for you. Is number 2 being watched? Because they call at that moment and ask, does he need assistance? And he quickly shuts it down, going, no, everything's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. Let me throw this one out too. Could this number 2 be so new that number 1 might not recognize his voice?
He's new enough that I do remember the Tally-Ho having that article that the prisoner was reading outside at the cafe that's talked about, and that's when he gets the whole thing of, I think, circling the security statements that he makes. So he's new enough that he's being quoted about security measures and stuff like that, is my guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just a funny little thing. I can tell the script writer probably really didn't even think about it. He just has him pick up the phone. But I'd be surprised to know that direct line to number one, that kind of phone is sitting around anywhere else. And if it's just that one in number two's office right next to his chair, it really should only be number two who is answering that phone. I just thought it was a funny little thing. Like, why is he explaining who he is?
Right. I thought the next scene was interesting because number two orders special surveillance, he says, on the prisoner. And we see our prisoner walking to the local shop where now there's this sign outside that says music makes a quiet mind, which he'll quote later on. And he steps inside. We've got a new shopkeeper.
Yeah, well, the other one was part of the conspiracy, remember?
Yeah.
So he's gone. He's out of there.
Exactly, yeah. I thought this was interesting, though, because when they said music at first, I thought maybe he was going to take up a musical instrument or something. I didn't realize it was about record players and records themselves. And, of course, he sees a particular – he just pulls out, as we learn later on, it's just a random record. But what's interesting is, I don't know if you caught it, there's a little design on the front of the album that looks like a 6.
No, I didn't notice that. You know what I did notice is that possibly for the first time, there are things from the outside world in a shop. I don't think that we've really seen that before. Not only are these records there, and they're definitely not from the village. They're not produced in the village. They're from the outside world. But also, when he comes up to the rack to take a copy of the Tally-Ho, on top and below it, you can see magazine covers. And again, those are not village magazines, as far as I can tell. They're from the outside world.
The bottom one was. The bottom one. The bottom one was. I made it a point to look and see because I was curious because they had pictures, and the bottom one said Village something. The top one I couldn't make out at all.
Oh, it was probably the Village Voice. Okay, but still, I question that the village authorities would allow anything to come in from outside the village. They want people to be as immersed in village life as possible. And I question whether that can happen if they're allowed to see things from their old lives.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, even and the shopkeeper will even say it because later on, there's also the cuckoo clocks. And he says, we just got these in. In from where?
Right, in from where, yeah.
Yeah.
If this was earlier on in the show, right, our prisoner would be asking that question.
Yes.
In from where? Yeah.
Now, he takes the album and then he goes over to the shopkeeper and asks for all the other copies. And
six copies.
6 copies in total.
I did notice that.
Yes. 6 copies in total. Now, I thought it was interesting because at first I thought, okay, he's going to go home and he's going to listen to them or it's something weird. He then steps over to a listening booth.
Talk about an archaic thing. Have a young person watch this episode. Now, interestingly enough, they would be able to recognize a record player since like vinyl is like cool again.
Right.
But the idea of a listening booth, you know, this is such an old idea that you could go to a store, and specifically record stores, and actually take the records and then walk off to a booth and listen to them. I think the idea was that would help you decide whether you wanted to own it or not. And I'm laughing because I can think of like in the 80s when I was buying a lot of albums, how many albums I took a chance on. Like I'd see a video on MTV and I'd like it, so I'd go and find the album, and my friends and I would always, say it was a real crapshoot. And we had this rule of thumb that if we went home and there was at least 3 good cuts on it, then it was worth it. And if there wasn't, it was a waste of money. If only we had listening booths at that point.
Well, who did have a listening booth, our one of our favorite TV shows, one episode we saw the listening booth where the character was trapped in it for hours listening to rock and roll.
Oh, what show was that?
Batman.
Oh, of course. Yes, yeah, me. Yes, of course.
The infamous Zodiac Crimes episode with the Joker and Penguin. Yeah. Now, I thought, and then later on, he is actually going to have the album, or he'll have a record player. I don't know if he's playing the exact same album at the time, but he goes into the booth, and it's not much of a booth either. That's the thing. It's just a sort of bubble against the wall that he can sort of, I guess it drowns out enough of the noise that you can listen to it. He proceeds to go through each album and time, like maybe about 10 seconds of each, writing down little notes as he goes along, and the shopkeeper's watching this the whole time.
He's watching his watch. I get a kick out of it because that thing is like one half of the cone of silence from Get Smart.
Right.
And it's so funny when he puts the record on and he quick darts his head back underneath that thing, so as to listen to it without any disturbance. But if you'd never watched this episode before, through this whole thing, you may be like number 2 and wonder, what is he doing? And everything, not realizing yet that this is all the beginning of an elaborate ruse.
Exactly. Yep.
This is. I'm just chuckling because to me, this is just the beginning of the fun of this episode. Number 6 is on top the entire time, all throughout the entire thing.
Yes, he is.
He is in control, and I just love it. I know before we started recording, you had said something to the effect of that it was kind of redundant or maybe even padded.
Yes.
But, and I might even agree with you, but I think it's so entertaining that I don't mind that it's, if you'll pardon the pun, hammering the point home.
Yeah, I think we quickly see who the hammer is here in this one.
Yeah.
He returns the albums, saying they're no good. They're not what he's looking for. He goes off. The shopkeeper calls number 2 and reports on what's going on. He brings the records to 2. 2 can't find anything wrong. He listens to them and all. The prisoner also left his newspaper there, and that's where the bit I was talking about where he has the word security circled with a question mark next to it.
Right. Number 2 sort of starts to get paranoid pretty quick. It's almost not much of a gradual paranoia that creeps in. He must be a paranoid person to begin with, or already on edge. Whether he's getting pressure from number 1 on different things or not. But he starts to get a little nutsy, pretty much right off the bat.
He does. Now, see, this is why I was thinking that driver was number 14 because, he's got to have been one of the people in the fight because our prisoner then sees number 14 walking by. And he follows him and sees that he's going back to the prisoner's house, lets himself inside. Prisoner doesn't see him, like what he's doing. He just waits. And then the man steps out a few moments later after taking a piece of paper from the prisoner's desk.
Right. Which number 2 saw on the cameras, him writing at his desk.
Yes. Now, it's interesting. In this case, he's able to make out, because he saw him writing on the desk, he's able to make out that there is still a faint impression. So he uses this machine that basically enhances the impression and is able to read the writing on there.
Yeah.
Which is a note to the superiors. I think it was X04 specifically he was reporting to about the instability of 2 from, and it wasn't 6 necessarily, he said. I think it was W6 or something like that?
I think it's D6. Because that's brought up again at the very end. D6.
Yes, D6. But of course it's got 6, and it's, so he assumes.
It's X04, I believe.
X04, okay. Right.
Yeah, X04, and he's supposedly D6.
Yeah. We get this big scene now where that evening 14 follows him using a radio to report back to 2 as 2 is following further behind, following our prisoner along the beach until they get to one of my favorite parts of the village, the boat, the beached boat.
I
there.
thought of you as soon as I saw the boat.
He enters for a moment and then leaves. 14 and 2 go in and find that an envelope has been left behind. And once again, it's like I said, there's that scene. They go back to the house, and 2's opening up the envelope, and he looks at 14. He's like, "That'll be all." That stuff I liked.
Number 14 just wants to be there so bad. He wants to be in on this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
He has definite ideas of elevating his position.
Right. And this is where the paranoia really starts to kick in now, because he has one of the lab people examine the 3 sheets of paper that are inside the envelope for anything. He says, use x-rays, use this, do that. So he does that, and they come back, and he's like, they're just blank pieces of paper. So then he suspects that the lab technician is in on it with the prisoner.
Yeah, now the paranoia really comes in.
Yes.
Where everybody starts to be in on whatever it is that's going on.
Yep. The next morning, the prisoner places an ad in the Tally Ho, a quote from Don Quixote, which I know it was in the original Spanish, but I don't think they ever explained what it was. But Don Quixote itself, just the whole idea of chasing after windmills and such.
Yeah, they did actually, and you know what's funny is I was reading somewhere that it was changed somehow, and I'm trying to remember where it was that.
Something about the village. That's right.
Right, but it's actually, I think it's a paraphrasing of the actual quote, but yes, it's to say something about the village,
right?
Because I think the woman that he gives the note to or whatever, she recognizes that,
right? He then goes over to the phone, one of the local phones, calls the psychiatric unit at the hospital, and in a very officious voice asks about the psychiatric report on number 2. And of course, the poor chief psychiatrist is like, there is no report on number 2. And he goes, I see. Yeah. You don't want to talk about it over the phone. Very good. Of course, the call is recorded.
Yeah. You almost feel sorry for some of these guys because they don't know what's going on, and every time number 6, brings them into the plot, then they come under suspicion. and there's one guy, and it's coming up, that I actually really do feel very bad for. But let's move on.
Well, so that of course means the psychiatrist has to be brought in.
I understand. You would rather not talk on the telephone. Probably very wise. Never mind. I'll be seeing you later on. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you'd explain.
I can't. I'm as much in the dark as you are.
You don't know who it was who telephoned you?
No.
It was number 6. And the oscilloscope will prove it. Voices are like fingerprints. No 2 are the same. Even if the voice is disguised, the pattern doesn't change. I'll now show you the voice pattern of your caller. I understand. You would rather not talk on the telephone. Probably very wise. Never mind. I'll be seeing you later on. Mm-hmm. Now you'll see the pattern of the single word you, taken during a routine interview with number 6. Now we run the tape again. Compare. If the word you on the tape is identical to the one up there, the patterns will lock. Not talk on the telephone. Probably very wise. Never mind. I'll be seeing you. As I thought. They match. It was number 6 who telephoned you. Do you still plead innocent?
I tell you, I haven't the faintest idea.
You aren't preparing a report on my mental health?
Of course not.
And number 6 didn't see you later?
No.
Then why did he ring you?
Well, I've told you I don't know.
You're a psychiatrist, aren't you? Would you say that number 6 was mad?
Not according to our records.
Then he had a reason for telephoning you, didn't he? What was it?
Why don't you ask him?
Would you like to sit in this chair?
I was merely suggesting.
Don't tell me what to do!
the psychiatrist pushes a little back, whereas as before
Definitely.
It was just, I don't know what you're talking about, and he puts up with the roars and the yelling. He pushes back a little, so it almost seems like number 2 might smack him.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. This might be the guy that finally, when number 2 dismisses him and he gives this very dry thank you as he leaves. I actually laughed out loud by the guy's delivery. I think it was that guy, if I'm not mistaken. It was a simple little thing, but very funny the way it was delivered.
Yeah,
like thanks for nothing, idiot.
So we then cut to our prisoner. He goes up to the village band and requests a song. And I'm wondering, was that some of the music from the record he was listening to?
Yeah. The record was Bizet, and shoot, the band leader is then questioned, and he says what it is. I don't think it was also Bizet.
Okay. But since that's what he did there, and he requested a song, and I guess he never requests a song. I don't know. He's never that engaged in the village, but that brings the conductor to number 2's attention, and he gets the grilling. What else did he say to you? Are you in on this?
You know what? I'm actually reading this. It is the same piece.
It is? Okay.
Yeah. It's Ferendel. We're going to get angry emails about this because of my murdering of whatever. But yeah, it says it's the same Bizet piece.
Okay. All right. Because that makes sense then, because it's like he was already listening to the album. Now, why is he requesting it? Is it a code? Is it, because that's the other thing too. Codes are going to play a lot up in as we move on here and such in the episode. Then he has a personal message sent over the radio to himself.
And here is a personal message for number 6. It is from 113.
I'll call you later.
And it reads, warmest greetings on your birthday. May the sun shine on you today and every day. And that concludes the personal messages. We continue with music.
And it's sad because we get that little scene in the graveyard where he's looking at 73's grave, the woman who jumped out the window.
Yes.
But then he looks at number 113 and obviously gets that idea about using poor deceased number 113.
Yes, and as we quickly find out, because he then visits control number 2 and he wants to know, he just storms right in screaming, what's going on here? And they're all kind of like,
Yeah. I actually feel bad for our bald-headed supervisor / control.
Yes.
Who we don't see consistently, but he comes and goes mostly because of the ordering of the episodes. But he's actually a recurring role in this show, so you kind of get used to him. And I don't really have anything against him. Yeah, he's working for the bad guys, but he's never really done anything necessarily evil or bad. But I feel bad for him. The funny thing is for the position that he's in, he's a real panty waste. Like he almost starts crying immediately. And then he literally loses his job.
Yeah.
Yeah, like get out of here, all right, wow. He's relieved. You're relieved.
He's relieved, but then it's so funny because he's not at the point of paranoia yet where he's got to be meticulous about who he replaced. He just points to something and goes, you're the new supervisor.
Right.
And that's when, he goes back and he's with number 14 and they're reading the paper with the quote from Don Quixote and, the whole thing about the village and stuff like that. And this is where it gets interesting. 14 says to him, give me the means. Let me take care of him. I'll get him out of the way. And 2 is concerned that the superiors will be upset with him. But 14's like, look, I'll deal with it. So you're not even connected with this.
Yeah. It is a really interesting exchange. We're so used to getting the line about the tissues must not be damaged.
Right.
But that seems to be pretty much out the window. The number 2 doesn't really seem to be concerned about that. I mean, he does slap number 6 around. He says, you're going to pay for this in the beginning. I'm almost surprised that at that point, number 2 doesn't let him go ahead and do it, but he wants to get to the bottom of the whole thing. But yeah, number 14's desire to do some damage is really fun.
It's fun, and at the same time, it leads then to this weird next scene because the prisoner arrives at Tu's house at that moment saying he was summoned, which isn't true. He made the whole thing up. He goes, I guess somebody's impersonating you or something like that. Tu sends 14 away. The prisoner walks off with him, and 14 challenges the prisoner to a contest, and we get, I don't know what this is. I didn't have time to go looking it up. Clearly, it has something in Japanese culture because they were playing Japanese-style music as they were doing it. But the two of them...
Could you possibly be talking about the 800-pound gorilla in the room?
Is it really that? I just felt, my God, now, because here's my argument about... I said before the show started, we get it. He's trying to mind screw with him here. I thought this episode was a little too padded. It was like after a certain point, I thought... And then... It's like, well, we can only do this for so long. Let's throw in this weird thing. Who knows? Maybe Patrick McGowan loved it on a trip to Japan and wanted to work it into the show and introduce it to British culture.
Before we get to this 800-pound gorilla, I want to backtrack just a little tiny bit here. 6 comes in. He says, I was summoned. Number 2 says, no, you weren't. I think number 6 tips his hand a little too much when he goes immediately to, I think somebody is impersonating you. I thought it was this kind of this big jump to that. And I almost yelled out, stop, you're going to tip your hand. Why number 2 doesn't, at this point in the entire thing, does not see through all of this? It really speaks to the guy's paranoia. I mean, any other number 2 in this show, with the exception of the A, B, and C number 2, potentially, we should have seen through this and seen that it, like, okay, you're just trying to play with my brain here, But if there was a moment where he would have seen through it, it was that. I just thought that was a really big, because he just, without missing a beat, he says, somebody must be impersonating you. I would have went, well, where did you get that from? What?
See, but he's so far gone.
Yeah. Yes. I guess that's what it is. Okay. You want to talk about Kasho.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. This is quite infamous amongst prisoner fans. It's not the only episode that features Kasho. It's featured more so in an episode that was filmed, I believe, before this one, but we haven't seen yet. This is one of these weird moments in 1960s and 1970s television in a science fiction fantasy type show where they try to do some world building. And they create a fake sport. Let's be blunt about it. They create a fake sport. I don't know if at the time that anybody watching this said, "Oh, wow, how cool!" I mean, like, what is that? Maybe that's real? It's not real. There is actually a martial art with a big long name that has Kasho in it, but is not. I don't think it has trampolines, as far as I know, in it, and a pool of water in the middle, and that they're wearing motorcycle helmets and robes, and just wait, John, you ain't seen nothing yet. There's a long, if my memory serves, there's a longer sequence of this sport in it might even be the next episode.
So basically, this is like the Star Trek equivalent of Parisi Squares, or the Battlestar Galactica equivalent of, I think they called it Trilon or something like that.
Thank you. Battlestar Galactica is where I was going with this. Yes, I don't know if this sport has, like, they even bothered to make up any actual sort of rule to it or anything, or damn well there are prisoner fans somewhere who have played this. It's like Quidditch in Harry Potter, But actually, there's enough of Quidditch made up. I think there's, J.K. Rowling made up complete rules to Quidditch. It has everything you need except for brooms to fly on. but fans of it may have the ability to play it somehow. Personally, I find it's kind of hard to deal with this crazy thing. It's actually called Kasho Shorei Ryu Kempo, which Wikipedia translates as Old Pine Tree School Fist Law. But I ran through just the word Kasho through Google's Japanese English translator, and it translated it for me as old book or rare book. So what the hell that has to do with anything, I don't really know. But as far as I know, the original Japanese, and yeah, you get that kind of Japanese tones in the music there, and they bow to each other and all of that. But I don't really think that the martial arts was jumping around on trampolines with motorcycle helmets and robes and boxing gloves and a pool of water.
And a pool of water. Well, let me ask you one question. He won, right? The prisoner.
Yeah. In fact, I think he probably, if I was him, I think he probably would have dropped number 14 in that water, but those two guys walked in and demanded the court.
Right.
Yeah, they laid the silent pressure on there, like, come on, we want to use the court.
And he was kind of like, I proved my point.
Had a little element of rollerball in it with they are up on the railing.
Yes.
At one point, yeah. You know what? Rollerball is a great example of, again, a fake sport that as far as I could tell actually could have been played. It had actual rules and how to do it. But anyways, that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. We'll bring this back up next time we see Kasho.
Well, I'll tell you, there's you say that now, and all of a sudden I'm thinking of one more. The TV show Sliders, very early on in the series, they slid into a world where brains were more revered than sports. And yet they had a sport called Mind Games, which was a combination of kind of like dodgeball and what do they call it? Yes, the game with the black and white tiles. Othello is
yes, yeah,
yeah, and they had to capture squares by answering questions while also passing the ball along. But there were rules.
Right.
There were rules. There were enough rules that you could actually play the game yourself. Yeah. During the course of the episode, they explained it enough.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say, if anybody out there listening to this has actually played Kasho, I want to hear about.
Yeah, I would too.
I want to see video.
That's what did me too. There you go. Pictures, video, any visual representation, I'm there.
Yes, anything that we can make fun of.
Hey, they play Quidditch. I can't make fun of the Quidditch players.
I know. Yeah, but it can't be very much fun if you can't actually fly on the broom.
Well, he does defeat number 14, and they go their separate ways. A little later on, he's walking through the village, and he spies some pigeons on the rooftop nearby. So he goes into the shop again, buys himself a little notebook, and those cuckoo clocks, he picks out one in particular, and you can see it. As the shopkeeper then reports to two, he was more interested in the box than he was the cuckoo, the box that the thing comes in, because it's got a nice little flap thing on it.
and you know what? That cuckoo clock is all beat up.
Yeah.
It's not new.
Yeah.
There's a shot of it, and I'm trying to, it maybe might be when they're taking it apart, or it's a shot of it, and it's all like beat up and worn and everything. It's definitely not a new cuckoo clock.
Right. We cut to his home. He's sitting outside, which was a nice shot. I liked that. He's sitting outside having a sandwich. He takes little pieces of the sandwich and starts laying it on the ground. And we see that the box has been set up with a pencil. So he's trying to trap one of the pigeons.
Yeah, but listen, there's a funny little gaffe here. He throws a piece of the sandwich in the box. when you see him open the box, I believe it is, to get the bird out, there's a close-up of in the box with the bird, and it's one whole half of a sandwich with one bite out of it.
Yeah.
I don't ask me how I noticed that or anything. Just a little continuity. The continuity person wasn't really on the ball there.
Well, you would think that, you would think because it's he would have eaten more.
Yes.
Even if
no, I think that's actually like the bite that number 6 took out of it. I don't know. But
okay.
Funny. But it's a whole triangle, practically a whole triangle of like half of the sandwich. When the shot, but before that, when he's actually planting the piece in there, it's just a small piece that he throws in the box. But anyways, it worked. That's the real, that's the real key here is that it worked.
Yes. It does work because he sets that up to capture the pigeon, and while he's not waiting for it to happen, but while that's happening, he takes the clock, goes to number 2's house, and leaves it right outside his door. And of course, since he's being surveyed,
It's a bomb. That's it. It must be a bomb.
I love it. I just love it when number 2 freaks out. It's a bomb. Like immediately, it's a bomb. It could be anything else. It's a bomb. And he just loses it.
See, and this is where I'm starting to have a little bit. It's funny and all, and in fact, they even actually work in the Pop Goes the Weasel music.
Yeah. But here's the thing: is number 2 is not thinking at all, because I'm watching this thing and he's freaking out and yelling it's a bomb and getting a bomb squad or whatever, but he never stops to think, how the hell would number 6 have made a bomb?
I'll take it one step further. Why wouldn't he think, why is number 6 making a bomb if he's just there to observe me?
Uh-huh. Yeah, right. It seems like an extreme measure. Like,
right.
He's doing all these other weird things and undermine him or whatever. I mean, number 14 goes on and on about like the whole pitch that he makes about he's trying to undermine you, you know? And then all of a sudden he thinks that number 6 just goes from undermining to him as I'm going to blow him up. I'm going to, kill him, assassinate him, I guess.
Yeah.
But again, I go back to like how, where, and when does he think that number 6 made a bomb? Because he's not thinking. He's completely unhinged at this point.
Right, exactly. He is. So he sends their version of the bomb disposal squad to come. It's a guy with a bucket and a garbage can. The bucket's got sand.
Yeah. I'm assuming it's not a formal bomb squad.
No.
I'm thinking these guys probably don't get much work in the village. There's probably not a whole lot of bombs.
No, but see, you got that. And then what happens is that, and while they're just dealing with the bomb, the prisoner has captured his pigeon. He's walking off up into the hills and stuff with his box with the bird and stuff like that. But then we cut to the bomb expert, I guess, the guy who's taking the clock apart. He's in this thing that is made up of all these sandbags. Was this already made? Did they make this on the fly? And could they have afforded to have waited that long if this was a bomb? Like it's and not only that, he has no protection. The guy who's doing it, none.
He's expendable.
Yes.
Yeah, who was all the sandbags to protect? Number 2, I guess. But you're right. It's quite an elaborate little room that they've made with these sandbags. And where? Is it outside? It must be, because you wouldn't really need all that if it was inside. You'd have some other kind of a room that could withstand a bomb going off.
Right.
But so this obviously there must have been other times in the past where there were bombs or bombs suspected in the village to have all of these things in place. I love it. And then I do got to admit, I love the look on the bomb disposal guy, the guy who takes the clock apart, because, he doesn't say anything. He just holds up the pieces of the bird and such. If anybody deserved a slap across the face, it's that guy. Because he was pretty much rolling his eyes. He was. As soon as he did that, I said, how cheeky. Like, and number 2 should have said something. Like, how dare you? Yeah, he was rubbing 2's face in that one. I mean, he holds up the little cuckoo and like manipulates it, almost like to make it laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a funny scene. Because if number 2 was in his right mind, he would not have put up with that kind of insubordination. That guy's great. He deserves a medal.
Oh, so the prisoner makes his way to the restricted area, we're told, because Control sees him, where they also see him writing something on a piece of paper, putting it on the pigeon's leg and setting it free. We see that what he wrote is a series of numbers. And I thought this was an interesting bit. Control is able to knock the pigeon out of the sky with what they call it a beam. Low power.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the nature of that was supposed to be.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting. I don't know if that's the only time we ever see the beam, but
I can't. I mean, I don't know. We'll find out, but I can't think of another time. It's like the bomb room and all of that. It's, they have these things to knock carrier pigeons out of the sky.
And it's this whole, and what's, again, it's funny because they don't spend any time showing you the beam, how it works. They just show it being activated, rising up and stuff, getting into place. They spend more time tracking the damn bird.
Right.
See, those are the little things that get me.
A little bit of rotoscoping of an actual beam coming out.
Right, exactly.
You can't have everything.
Yeah. But they get the pigeon down. They're able to decipher the message that the code.
So is the pigeon dead?
No, I saw the pigeon move when they brought it into the lab.
Okay, I feel relieved.
Yes.
Now there's a funny little thing. Number 2 opens that piece of paper, right, and we get a glimpse of it again. We saw it when number 6 was writing it, and then we see it again. Now I read that it's not the same actual piece of paper. It's like the first one is McGowan's actually writing it. They supposedly, when they have the insert shot of it after number 2 gets to see it, it's different, right? Like somebody else is writing.
Oh, they probably lost the original because it was so small,
or whatever. But here's a funny thing, and again, I don't know how I noticed this, but if you look at that insert shot, right above the written numbers, there's the impression of another number written above that.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
As if the prop master had written something on the piece of paper that was on top of that one.
Oh, okay.
And it was hard enough that it actually made an impression, and then he used the next piece of paper to make the note with the numbers. I don't know. It like stood out to me really clearly, and I think it was like literally like 25 or something like that. But if you ever watch this again, and anybody out there doing it, just watch it. It's so funny because I don't think it's on purpose. I think, you know what? It could literally be because of our high definition televisions. You probably couldn't see it, back in the day. But it's funny. You can tell that another sheet of paper was at one time on top of that one, and the numbers were. You know what? It could have been somebody. The prop master was like practicing writing the numbers to make that little prop piece of paper with the actual numbers on it. I don't know. The mind boggles.
See, now that's interesting because then I'm thinking to myself, we could just use number 2's machine to figure it out.
Right? Yeah. Right. Well, here's the other thing I want to ask. I should have brought this up when way back when he finds the 3 sheets of blank paper in the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't he use that machine that he used the first time? But he doesn't. He calls the lab.
Well, because I think this time he couldn't see the impression, whereas the last time he saw, because he was holding it up and he says, "I'm making something out."
Okay, my idea is that those pieces of paper were full sheets of 8.5.
Well, yeah, that too. They were bigger.
8 by 10 pieces of paper or whatever, and they wouldn't fit in the slot in that one machine. But this was funny is that he actually has them feed those numbers into it, and I'm thinking they're not going to get anything out of that, but they do.
Yeah. He uses a known code
out of that. Like, what the hell kind of code would that have been to, that the computer would have been able to figure that out? I didn't get that at all.
Well, it had to be just some sort of known code that his Secret Service or whatever they use, because
I guess because I was expecting either cert that it doesn't mean anything, or maybe even like gibberish or something, but it actually does say something.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, we're going to get that later on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course.
So they decipher it, and the message basically is vital message tomorrow. Wait for a visual signal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next morning, our prisoner goes out to the beach, and he's got a mirror, and he just starts signaling, reflecting off the sun. And of course, 2 is watching the whole thing, and he's like, triangulate, who's he signaling to? And they're like, no one. He goes, no, come on, no one. And then they decipher it because he's just doing simple Morse code, and it's patty cake.
Must be a special code.
Here's your answer, sir.
Patter cake. This is what you put in.
And that's what came out, sir.
And it is a new code. And the computer's not programmed for it.
So now at this point we come to like the final straw, the final blow in our prisoner's plan here, because then he goes up to number 14, who's having his breakfast at the cafe, and he just starts engaging in conversation. He's doing hushed whispers that are loud enough for the nearby waiter to hear. And of course, everything he's saying just sounds so suspicious.
Yeah, and it's all just real funny stuff
right.
About, it's just nonsense stuff,
about sleeping, having trouble sleeping or whatever. And,
And then he's like, and the waiter is watching us.
Yeah.
He keeps looking back at the waiter.
So the waiter, of course.
I think, you know what? I love, this is like, not necessarily my favorite episode, but number 6 is, what he's doing in this is some of my most favorite stuff of anything he ever does in any episode.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just great, and so well deserved. Number 2 just deserves this so much.
I'm going to ask you a question when we're done too about this, whole thing there regarding the prisoner and all. But the waiter goes and calls number 2, reports. So of course, that's it. I mean, when 14 goes to see 2 loses it with him. You of all people, I trusted you, and he smacks 14.
Yeah, right. Which I'm surprised number 14 does not haul off and slug him back.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been something.
And despite the protests that I'm innocent, I've always been here for you, I'm on your side, it doesn't matter. He just starts railing to the point where he nearly strikes also the butler and throws both he and 14 out.
There's it may be like a little throwaway thing, but the thing with the butler is really fascinating to me, that like you get out of this house.
Yeah.
And then they bother to come back and show the butler leaving.
Mm-hmm.
Which is really, really interesting.
With his packed bag.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the butler actually leaves. You would think that he's been through enough number 2s to know that he has a steady job no matter what. But I guess he just wanted to like get away from that guy for a little bit. But I just love it that they bother to show us Angelo leaving. And of course, he comes back. Of course, he has a steady job no matter what.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's probably it's either a confidence that it's like, well, he can't really fire me, but I can see he's out of control. I mean, because he never talks. So, or it just could be, I live to serve, and you don't want me serving. I'll go.
Permanent job job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, number one either promised him a job for the rest of his life, right?
Right.
Or he, like I said very early on, maybe he is number one.
Yeah. Which would explain
anyway.
Explain how number 2 is being observed. Maybe it's all through the eyes of the butler.
Yep. Good point.
So 14, in a fit, heads over to the prisoner's home, where our prisoner is just laying about, listening to music.
Turn that thing off.
I beg your pardon.
Turn it off, I said.
I'm listening. Music makes for a quiet mind. I'd rather you didn't. What's your problem?
You put the poison in.
Did I?
For number 2. I'm finished.
Sorry to hear that.
I'll kill you.
And they get into a fight.
Again, the balls on this number 14, to walk in and pick this fight with the guy in his own, and boy, do they wreck number 6's home. I'm sitting there watching this thing, and I'm like, man, they're just tearing that place up. And it's a hell of a fight too.
It's a hell of a fight while the calming music is playing.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
But our prisoner again wins. This time though, tossing 14 out the balcony door. So I don't know. I don't know if he falls.
No, not out, but through.
Through. Through.
Yeah.
Did he kill him?
Funny. Yeah, but they're gonna need to call the repair guys over for all of that damage.
But did he kill him?
I don't think he killed him. No, number 14's going to be hurting, but
right.
I don't because that balcony is not up above, no, that's the balcony that he's sitting on when he's eating the sandwich, right? Yeah, because it's right outside the front door, I think. You know what? I'm not sure now, because there's the episode where he leaves in the middle of the night.
Right. See, that's the door I was thinking.
He has to jump down off his balcony.
See, that's the door I'm thinking.
Then you know what? Then I don't think I feel like there's not any consistency between these two things. Because where he's sitting to eat his sandwich and set the bird trap is right outside his front door, right?
Right. It's exactly outside.
And they'll picture the inside of 6's home, and I'm pretty sure that, you can see the front door, and then as you're looking, and then going over towards the right is the balcony door. Where the hell would why would there be a balcony that's up above, unless once you walk outside the door of 6's home, the outer walk maybe dips way down. Gosh, I don't know if that's consistent. Wow, I might have to look into that. I wonder if there's some kind of like blueprints that somebody has done somewhere about how that all works. No, I don't get the impression that he throws him off of a high balcony. I think it looks to me more like number 14 crashes through the door and just lands on the balcony. I don't think he goes over the balcony.
Okay. All right.
That's kind of extreme. Even I don't think number 6 would go so far as to try to kill 14.
Well, in the heat of it, he may not have intended to.
I don't think there's any heat in any of it at all.
Okay.
Number 6's part. I think he's literally just taking care of a problem. You know, he's taking care of a home invader.
Yeah.
If I'm completely wrong on that, then I'll admit it. But I don't think he kills the guy. No.
Okay. All right. But he takes him out anyway, so that that threat is out of the way for now. He makes his way to number 2's home.
What are you doing here?
I've come to keep you company.
I hear that all your friends have deserted you. You can't trust anyone anymore. It's a pity. It's odd, isn't it? All this power at your disposal, and yet you're alone. You do feel alone, don't you? What do you want? Talk, to listen. I think so.
That's not like the old number 2. Where is the strong man? The hammer. You have to be hammer or anvil, remember?
I know who you are.
I'm number 6.
No. D6.
D?
Yes, sent here by our masters to spy on me.
All right, I'm not quite with you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, you can stop acting now, you know. I've been on to you from the beginning. I knew what you were doing. All those messages you sent and all those people you recruited, I knew you were advanced. You didn't fool me.
Maybe you fooled yourself?
What does that mean?
Let us suppose, for argument's sake, that what you say is true, that I was planted here.
By XO4.
XO4? Very well. By XO4, to check on village security, to check on you.
You were!
What would have been your first duty as a loyal citizen? Not to interfere. But you did interfere. You have admitted it yourself. There is a name for that. Sabotage.
No.
Who are you working for, number 2?
For us! For us!
That is not the way it's going to sound to XO4.
I swear to you!
You could be working for the enemy, or you could be a blunderer who's lost his head. Either way, you failed. And they do not like failure here.
You've destroyed me.
No. You've destroyed yourself. A character flaw. You were afraid of your masters. A weak link in the chain of command, waiting to be broken.
Don't tell them. Don't report me.
I don't intend to. You are going to report yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to throw something out right here. I'll try to make it quick.
Okay.
I think if there was more time in this episode, or I almost thought that there would be a thing here where 6 tries to get some more information from number 2 when he's got number 2 on the ropes. He's got 2 as low as 2 can go. I almost thought he was going to start to throw in some questions to get to the bottom of who number 1 is, or a little bit more about how the village is run, because he basically is starting to fake his responses to what number 2 is saying. And I thought that he could have been maybe clever enough to twist it in a way that he gets some information. But obviously that's not what this episode is about. But it did occur to me, and I kind of, wondered if that would have worked at all. But I don't think it would have, because the more I think about it, number 6 cannot get that information, and in no way whatsoever does 6 lose in this episode. He loses nothing. At no point does he make any mistakes, or that nothing doesn't work for him, and then he totally wins at the end. So I can see now with what I'm saying wouldn't have worked, because he, if number 2 figured out what he was trying to do and withheld the information, then we would actually had a loss for number 6 in some way. But no, it's just wonderful. He gets the guy to hand himself in. How great is that?
Gets him to hand himself in by having him realize that he was never about the village's best interests when he behaved the way he did.
Yeah. I love it. You're going to report yourself.
Yeah.
And he does it.
Yeah, he does. But now let me ask you this then looping it back to what we said at the very beginning and what you were saying there about him not taking advantage of the broken man to ask the questions, then I think it's a pretty obvious answer, but it could also be a nuanced answer. Did he do this for 73, or did he do it for himself?
It's a wonderful question. It's one of the best questions you have ever asked in this or any other podcast we've ever done.
Wow.
I compliment you on this question, because it is a wonderful question, and I'm not so sure that there's a definitive answer to it, like you say. He definitely did do it, at least in part, for 73.
Right.
Which says a lot about his character. But if he also didn't do it, at least in some small part, for his own satisfaction, then I don't think he's the guy that, we've been following for this time. It's funny. It reminds me of something. When I was in grade school, we had a substitute teacher one day. And for whatever reason, all my classmates decided to almost do this exact same thing. It reminded me of this, drive this guy crazy. For no real reason, just to be malicious. And over the course of the day, they did, and I stayed out of it. I was kind of embarrassed about the whole thing, but they tried all these different things and drove this guy out of his brain, and we never ever saw him again. I think he probably quit after that.
Right.
It's a very similar situation. So that might have literally just been, kids who, for some reason or another, were so fed up with school and everything that they wanted to see if they could get rid of a guy and drive him to his limits. And in a way, I guess that's what this episode is too. I want to believe it was completely for 73. And if it is, I love that because of his attitude, of Six's attitude towards women in other episodes. That he could feel so strongly about that woman killing herself to get away from number 2's abuse.
Right.
And that he goes to these lengths to do it. So what's your answer? What do you think?
I think I'm in the same boat. I think I want this to be about number 73. I think overall it is. I think the only thing, and I can't remember, something in the back of my mind, I should have written it down. If he had done it, I think I would have. I don't think he ever mentioned 73 again after that encounter in the hospital.
No, I don't believe he does, and people can correct us, if we're wrong. That's a really good point. That's a good question, and we don't actually have to have an answer for it. Should he, at the very end, have said something about her to the effect of, not necessarily literally, but to the effect of, this is for 73, or
right, or would that have been just too obvious?
He doesn't, because he has to carry it through to the bitter end. And break 2 completely. And if he puts any little inkling, into it, but deep down inside, he probably, if he's doing this for justice for her, he probably would have wanted to slip that in there somehow to make sure that he knows that the abuser knows why that was for, what that was all about. But he doesn't, I think, because again, he needs to push it through completely. That's 70, or pardon me, number 2 did it to himself, and that he's completely broken. He can't have number 2 try to come back from it once he's broken.
Right. Wow. Like I say, overall, I do. I'm with you on the same. I love this episode. I think it's one of the better ones. I think it's one of the better ones we've seen in a couple of episodes now. On that same note,
I definitely think so. Yeah,
I can't help but feel this could have either been a shorter story or a different way of structuring certain story elements. Because to me, I thought they overdid the whole driving him mad. I just think that it just went not too far, too much. That it's like, we get it.
If it was shorter, I don't know if they would have sold the idea of doing this to number 2, over a period of time.
Do you know what? As much as I would cheer him that he won and everything, considering how much they drove that point home, I think would have been a much more satisfying conclusion for me, just based on that one thing, is if they turned around and number 2 and number 14 and all of them. But then again, it would have also been the pat ending that we've seen in a number of episodes. You really don't know us, dear boy. That's not how it works. And it's like they were on to him all along.
I am so glad that there's nothing like that at all. I think having an episode where 6 has one gigantic, complete victory.
Right.
With no, it's all black and white. He wins. No, he doesn't escape. I get that. But you know what? That had to feel pretty good. He got rid of a number 2 with his, own machinations, and one he accused of being sadistic. I think not only did number 6 deserve that victory, not only did 73 deserve that victory, but we, the viewers, deserve that victory also.
Here's the one thing, though, and I'm gonna chop the legs out. I think maybe you can tell me otherwise. Out from the whole
premise. Go ahead and try there, buddy.
Because we said this episode feels fine as it is, as the 10th episode in the series. It's well enough along. He makes the statement that others have tried to break him before, and then suddenly number 2 believes that our prisoner is observing him. Like, if this was early on in the series, I could see that kind of paranoia because, maybe he is here for something else. Maybe he's observing. After all this time, now you're tipping your hand that you're supervised, that you're observing. Like, to me, that was the only problem with this whole thing was that how could you fall for that after so many others have tried to break this man and failed?
I made that note, to myself. Why does 2 not see through this? I think maybe what you're saying is something along the lines of would you have liked to gotten more about why this guy slips into paranoia?
It might have, and that might have actually worked better, trying to get some sort of an indication of the paranoia, other than if you wanted to and you could put your finger on it from the very beginning when number 2 blames the prisoner outright for 73's death. It's like, I can't be blamed for anything. This is not my fault. You're here. I'm putting the blame on you.
Yeah. Well, like this show in general, there's a lot of food for thought here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But overall, I'm very satisfied with this one compared to a few others.
I'm so glad that this held up to my own memory, and in a way to my dad's memories. I could look him in the face and say, you know what? Yeah, it was a good episode, and it is still a good episode. I'm not surprised that one stuck out in your memories more.
Yeah. But a word to one now. This is the last, I think, of the episodes that is heavy on the exteriors.
Yeah, this is definitely a Port Miran heavy episode. That's for sure. It's always nice to see all that location shooting, and it's all McGowan. There's nobody else that's in the exterior shots. It's all looks to be just McGowan.
Right. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to touch on with this episode?
No. I think we probably had like as much fun with this one as we've had with just about any, and not making fun of it, but literally just having fun, with it. Again, I'm going to go back to saying that I actually kind of laughed out loud maybe like 3 different times in this episode out of somebody's way they delivered a line, a reaction, or something, like that. It's funny. We didn't even say anything about that. We've actually seen number 2 before in this show.
Oh, yes, that's right. I did have a note about that there. He was our man Thorpe in Many Happy Returns.
Yeah, right. And, I saw some stuff online about some people try to make it the same. It's the same character. And I don't think there's any validity to that.
I don't either.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the typical everything's got to be connected and fan think. And I'm not really putting those fans down because I've done similar sorts of things in my past. But this time it's like I just don't see it. No, it just happens to be that the guys, they look alike.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree.
I have to report a breakdown in control. Number 2 needs to be replaced. Yes, this is number 2 reporting.
Well, then, if that's the case, let's close the book here on this episode of Once Upon a Village, a Prisoner podcast. Next time, if we're going by the British order, and we are, it's your funeral, Jim.
Oh, great.
I mean the episode title.
Yes. Yeah, let's hope it's not our hero's funeral.
Yeah, exactly. This one I don't remember, so it'll be interesting to watch this one.
Okay.
Yeah. So until then, folks, thank you so much for listening. Make sure, you're writing us here on the Facebook page where we're storing the episodes on the Chronic Rift Facebook page, or heading over to chronicrift.com, or writing us at thechronicrift@gmail.com, commenting on Twitter at chronic_rift, or you can also reach out to Jim. He's on Twitter at writer Jim Beard.
Yeah, and listen, if we don't get at least one email telling us that we are laughing too much in this episode, I'm going to be severely disappointed.
I think as you pointed out, though.
But really, I want to hear about Kasho. All you Kasho players, you better chime in.
Yes. Yeah. I want pictures. I want video.
And video.
So until then, folks, thank you so much for listening. Once again, Jim, everyone, be seeing you.
Be seeing you.
Hammer Into Anvil is very much a confrontation of quotes between number 2 and the prisoner, quotes which serve to summarize their opposing roles. Number 2's quote is from Goethe, "You must be anvil or hammer." Here we see number 2's orientation, strict, violent, authoritarian. Everything is black or white. There are no shades of gray. The prisoner's quote, however, comes from Cervantes. "There is more harm in the village than is dreamt." Not only is this a very true statement, but it also encapsulates the prisoner's psychology. Picaresque, romantic, subtle, and witty. He knows he's tilting at windmills, but he also knows he'll be more successful at it than Don Quixote. Number 2's either-or mentality will prevent him from seeing the self-mocking double meaning of this quote. Our hero demonstrates a masterful knowledge of psychology in this episode. He realizes, for instance, that if you scratch a sadist, you find a paranoid. Any person intent on causing pain must be secretly afraid that the tables may someday be turned. All the prisoner has to do is push the buttons to activate the self-destruct aspect of this number 2's personality. After a painful process of trial and error over the previous episodes, here number 6 finally attains a mastery of the psychology of his captors. Last time, in A Change of Mind, we got a glimpse of this mastery. Number 6 defeated number 2 by turning the village against him. But it was a dirty victory. He used drugs and hypnotism and manipulated the sheep-like villagers just as blatantly as any number 2 had ever done to him. It was a victory fought on the village's terms, and those terms are just not good enough for the prisoner. We saw this in Living in Harmony when he removed his badge before he took up his gun. And now in Hammer Into Anvil, he wins a decisive victory on his own terms, totally destroying his nemesis, using only his own knowledge, actions, and wits. This turning point is symbolized quite subtly in a change of mind when number 6 grasps the handlebars of the high-wheeler bicycle in number 2's chamber.
Oh, yes, everything's clear-cut now. It's quite simple.
Why is this so symbolic a scene? Well, the answer lies in the meaning of the high-wheeler. Obviously, it's the logo of the village and the seal of the office of number 2. Curiously enough, the original high-wheeler, invented in 1871 by James Starley, was known for its instability and for the skill required to master it, much like the leadership of the village. By taking it firmly in his grasp, the prisoner shows us he has mastered the village, and from now on, he's in control. But as with all symbols, we can get much more from the bike than just the surface meaning. McGowan says he chose the bike to represent progress, a runaway machine that gets us nowhere fast. And knowing the punning nature of the series, perhaps the bike represents the big wheels of society oppressing the little ones. But ironically, without those little cogs, the big machine would topple. A further irony is apparent in the name of the device. The high-wheeler is also known as the penny farthing bicycle, because the wheels are proportionate to the sizes of the 2 British coins, the penny and the farthing. But the farthing, the small coin, is much more valuable than the large penny. The apparent values are reversed. Things are not as they seem on the surface. If we look at the main wheel and the frame together, they do sort of form a number 6. And from a distance, the bicycle design on the badges could suggest an open eye and eyebrow, the visual equivalent, perhaps, of the village's sinister slogan, "Be seeing you." The hand gesture of this salutation, by the way, also forms the number 6. But returning again to the punning aspects of the unconscious symbols, the bike could represent the cyclical nature of the series. As we soon shall see, the entire 17-episode presentation ends literally where it started. As T.S. Eliot put it, "In my end is my beginning."